Captain Taemin stood on the bridge of the Earth ship Harmony and watched the stars change. The jump drive shut down with a soft hum, and suddenly they were in a new place, a place no human had ever seen before. "We made it," said Sora from her station. She was the language expert on the ship. Her job was to talk to aliens and help them understand each other. The coordinates were perfect. Taemin nodded. His hands were steady on the rail, but his heart was beating fast. This was the most important day in human history. Today, Earth would ask to join the Galactic Confederation. Today, they would meet the aliens who ruled the stars. "Look at that," whispered Wu Jin. He was the military advisor, but right now, he sounded like a child seeing fireworks for the first time. Through the big window, they could see Nexus Prime. It was not like any planet humans had ever imagined. The whole world was covered in silver towers that reached up into the clouds. Ships moved between the towers like flying fish. Some ships were so big they looked like moving cities. Others were just points of light that zipped around faster than the eye could follow. "It's beautiful," said Hye-jin. She was the cultural expert. Her job was to help humans understand alien ways of life. "But it feels cold somehow." Taemin knew what she meant. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. There were no rough edges, no mistakes, no signs that real people lived there. It looked like a picture in a computer, not a real place where families lived and worked and played. "Incoming message," said Sora. She put her hand on her earpiece. "They're giving us permission to land. Bay 47 Alpha." The Harmony flew down toward the planet. As they got closer, Taemin could see that the silver towers were even bigger than he thought. Each one was like a mountain made of metal and glass. The landing bay they were heading for was just a tiny dot on the side of one tower, but when they got there, it was huge, big enough to hold 100 ships like theirs. The ship touched down with barely a bump. Taemin looked at his crew. Sora was checking her translation equipment. Wu Jin was making sure his uniform looked perfect. Hye-jin was reading notes about alien customs on her tablet. "Remember," Taemin said, "we're here to show them that humans deserve a place in the galaxy. We're not just another primitive species. We have something to offer." "What if they don't think so?" asked Wu Jin. "Then we prove them wrong," Taemin said. The airlock opened, and they walked out into the landing bay. The air tasted strange, like metal and electricity. Everything was white and silver and clean. Too clean. Taemin had never been in a place that felt so empty of life. 3 aliens were waiting for them. Taemin had seen pictures, but seeing them in person was different. The first alien looked like a giant bug, but it walked on 2 legs and wore clothes. Its skin was dark green and shiny like a beetle. It had 4 arms and eyes like black marbles. This was a Veltar. The pictures had said they were very logical and never showed emotions. The second alien was harder to look at. It was made of light and energy, but somehow it held the shape of a person. It glowed soft blue and moved like it was floating in water. This was a Cathara. They used to have bodies, but they gave them up long ago to become pure energy. The third alien looked the most normal, but also the most strange. It was shaped like a human, but half of its body was machine and half was flesh. Wires and tubes ran under its skin. One eye was normal, the other was a camera. This was a Dromond. They had mixed their bodies with machines to become perfect. "Welcome," said the Veltar. Its voice came from a machine on its chest because its mouth was not made for speaking human languages. I am Kalex 44, observer of the Confederation Council. These are my associates, Energy Form Sis 9 of the Cathara and Unit Hex 12 of the Dromond Collective. Sora stepped forward. Thank you for meeting us. I am Sora, translator for the Earth delegation. This is Captain Taimin, our leader. These are Wu Jin, our military advisor, and Hie Jin, our cultural specialist. The aliens looked at them with what might have been curiosity. It was hard to tell with faces so different from human faces. Follow us, said KLX 44. The council will see you now. They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Everything was the same, white and silver. There were no pictures on the walls, no plants, no signs that anyone cared about making the place beautiful. It was efficient, but it made Tae-min feel sad. How many species are in the Confederation? Asked Hye-jin. 247, said Hex 12. Its voice was exactly like a computer. All have achieved transcendence beyond primitive biological needs. What does that mean? Asked Wu Jin. They no longer waste time on unnecessary activities, said Sis 9. Its voice sounded like music, but cold music with no feeling in it. Emotion, art, ritual, family bonds. These are inefficiencies that hold a species back from true progress. Tae-min felt his heart sink. He thought about his own family back on Earth, his wife and children, the little shrine in his house where he honored his grandparents, the festivals they celebrated, the songs they sang, the stories they told. Were all of these things just wasteful? They reached a huge room with a ceiling so high it disappeared in shadows. In the center was a circle of seats, and in those seats were the strangest collection of beings Tae-min had ever seen. Some looked like the three they had already met. Others were even stranger. One looked like a tree made of crystal. Another was just a floating ball of metal with lights on it. A third looked like a cloud of gas with eyes. In the biggest seat sat a being that looked almost human, but not quite. It was tall and thin, with pale skin and no hair. Its eyes were completely black. This had to be Chancellor Zix 9. So, said the Chancellor. Its voice filled the whole room without seeming loud. These are the humans, the species that still practices ancestor worship and holds ceremonies for the dead. The way it said the words made them sound dirty. Tae-min felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. We do honor our ancestors, he said. We believe they still guide us. Several of the aliens made sounds that might have been laughter, but not happy laughter. You waste energy on the dead, said a voice from somewhere in the circle. The dead cannot help you. They are gone. To spend time thinking about them is inefficient. You also gather in groups to share food and stories, said another voice. This serves no logical purpose. Food should be consumed for energy. Information should be downloaded directly to the brain. And you form emotional bonds. With offspring, said a third voice. This creates bias and prevents rational decision-making. Superior species produce offspring in laboratories and raise them with perfect logic. Tae-min looked at his crew. So-Ra's face was tight with anger. Wu Jin's hand was moving toward his weapon, though he stopped himself. Hye-jin looked like she might cry. We believe, Tae-min said carefully, that these things make us stronger, not weaker. How? Asked Chancellor Zix 9. Explain to this council how wasting time on primitive rituals makes your species stronger. Taemin thought about his grandmother's funeral, how the whole family had come together, how they had shared stories about her life, how they had cried together and laughed together and remembered her wisdom, how that day had made him feel connected to something bigger than himself. When we honor our ancestors, he said, we learn from their mistakes and their successes. When we gather to share food, we build trust and friendship. When we love our children, we give them the strength to be brave. Inefficient, said several voices at once. Perhaps, said Chancellor Zix9. You would like to prove your species has value to the Confederation? Yes, said Taemin. We would. Very well. There is a problem the Confederation has been unable to solve. 13 of our member worlds have gone silent. No communication, no trade, no response to our messages. Our most advanced scientists and philosophers have studied the problem. They have found no answers. The Chancellor leaned forward. If your primitive species can solve this mystery, we will consider your application for membership. If you fail, Earth will be classified as a pre-technological world. You will be forbidden from leaving your solar system for 1,000 years. Taemin felt the weight of his entire species on his shoulders. 1,000 years. That would be the end of human dreams of the stars. We accept, he said. Good. You have 30 days. Kalex 44 will provide you with the data we have collected. Do not disappoint us humans. The galaxy has no patience for failure. As they were led out of the council chamber, Hyejin whispered, What have we gotten ourselves into? Taemin looked back at the circle of alien beings. They were all so sure that emotion and family and ritual were weaknesses. But what if they were wrong? What if the things that made humans human were exactly what the galaxy needed? We're going to show them, he whispered back. We're going to show them that being human is not a weakness. It's a strength they've forgotten how to use. The data files were huge. Sora had been reading for 3 days straight, and she still felt like she was drowning in information. 13 worlds, all gone silent at different times over the past 2 years. No distress signals, no signs of war, or disease or natural disasters. They just stopped talking to the galaxy and never started again. This doesn't make sense, she said, rubbing her tired eyes. Look at this. The planet Velkara had 50 billion people. The most advanced technology in the galaxy. Perfect weather control, unlimited energy, no poverty, no crime. Then one day, nothing. Taemin was studying star charts on the main screen. Each red dot showed one of the silent worlds. They were scattered across the galaxy with no pattern, he could see. What about the other worlds? He asked. Same story, said Wu Jin. He was reading military reports. Cathara Prime, the Dromon manufacturing world of Gear 7, the mixed colony of New Prosperity, all of them were perfect societies. All of them just stopped. Hyejin looked up from her own stack of files. The Confederation sent investigation teams to all 13 worlds. The teams found the planets completely functional. Cities running, machines working, food being produced, but no people anywhere. What do you mean, no people? Asked Taemin. I mean, the people were there, but they weren't really there. They were all in their homes, lying in special pods connected to virtual reality systems. The pods kept their bodies alive while their minds lived in computer worlds. But the virtual systems were turned off. The people were just lying there, not moving, not thinking, not doing anything. Sora felt a chill run down her back. Are they dead? No, said Hyejin. Their bodies are fine. Their brains show normal activity. They're just not responding to anything. It's like they all decided to stop living at the same time. Taemin stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the silver towers of Nexus Prime stretched up toward the stars. Everything was so clean and perfect and empty. We need to see one of these worlds for ourselves, he said. The Confederation won't let us land, said Wu Jin. They say it's too dangerous. Dangerous how? Asked Sora. They think it might be some kind of mental disease, something that makes people lose the will to live. They're afraid we might catch it. Taemin turned back to his crew. What do you think? Could a disease make an entire planet just give up? Not a normal disease, said Hyejin, but maybe something else. Maybe something wrong with their society. They spent the next week arguing with Confederation officials. Finally, Chancellor Zix-9 agreed to let them visit one world, but only with a full protection team and only for 6 hours. The world they chose was called Serenity. It had been a paradise world where 10 million beings from 12 different species lived together in perfect harmony. No war, no conflict, no problems of any kind. It had been silent for 8 months. The harmony dropped out of jump space near Serenity, and Taemin gasped. The planet was beautiful. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. It looked like Earth, but perfect. Too perfect. Scanning the surface, said Sora. All the cities are intact. Power systems running normally. Environmental controls working fine. But I'm not picking up any communication signals. No transport. Movement. Nothing that shows people are active. They landed in the main city. It was like landing in a museum. The streets were clean and empty. Beautiful buildings stretched up toward the sky. Gardens full of perfect flowers lined every walkway. But there were no people anywhere. Calex-44 had come with them, along with 2 other Confederation observers. The Veltar was carrying instruments that scanned for dangerous mental influences. Readings are normal, Calex-44 said. No biological threats detected, no psychic anomalies. Whatever happened here, it is not contagious. They walked through the empty streets. Taemin felt like they were walking through a dream. Everything was so perfect it didn't feel real. The buildings were all the same height. The trees were all the same size. Even the flowers in the gardens were arranged in perfect patterns. "Where is everybody?" whispered Wu Jin. They found the first person 3 blocks from the landing site. She was lying in a pod in the middle of what looked like a living room. The pod was like a bed with wires and tubes connected to it. A screen above the pod showed peaceful images of mountains and forests. The woman inside the pod was breathing. Her eyes were open, but they didn't focus on anything. When Hyejin waved her hand in front of the woman's face, there was no response. "She's alive," said Hyejin, "but she's not really here." They found more people in more pods, thousands of them. All alive, all breathing, all staring at nothing with empty eyes. "The virtual reality system was turned off 2 weeks ago," said Sora, reading from a computer terminal. "But they haven't moved since then. They just lie there." "What were they doing in the virtual worlds?" asked Taemin. Sora typed commands into the computer. "Let me see if I can access the records. Here we go." The virtual world was called Perfect Paradise. It was a place where nothing bad ever happened. No pain, no sadness, no conflict, no problems, just endless pleasure and happiness. "That sounds wonderful," said one of the Confederation observers. "Does it?" asked Hyejin. She was looking at the woman in the pod with sad eyes. If nothing bad can happen, does anything good mean anything? They spent the rest of their time on Serenity exploring the empty city. They found schools where robot teachers had been giving lessons to empty classrooms. They found restaurants where robot cooks had been making meals for no one. They found theaters where robot actors had been performing plays for empty seats. Everything was perfect and functional and completely meaningless. On the flight back to Nexus Prime, the crew was quiet for a long time. Finally, Wu Jin spoke up. "I think I understand what happened." "Tell us," said Taemin. "They were too happy. They had everything they wanted, so they stopped wanting anything. They had no problems to solve, so they stopped trying. They had no challenges to face, so they stopped growing." "But that doesn't make sense," said Colex 44. "Problems and challenges are inefficient. A perfect society eliminates all sources of suffering." "But what if suffering is important?" asked Hyejin. "What if struggle and challenge and even sadness are what make life worth living?" "Impossible," said Klex 44. "Suffering serves no logical purpose." Sora had been quiet during this conversation, but now she spoke up. "I've been thinking about Earth, about my childhood. Some of my best memories are from difficult times." "Like what?" asked Taemin. "Like when my grandmother was sick. The whole family came to take care of her. We took turns staying up all night, making her soup, telling her stories. It was hard and sad, but it was also beautiful. We were all together, and we all cared about each other, and we were all fighting for something important." "When she died," Sora continued, "we cried together, but we also celebrated her life. We told stories about her wisdom and her strength. We learned from her example. The sadness made the joy more precious." "This is inefficient thinking," said Clax 44, but its voice sounded less certain than usual. "Is it?" asked Taemin. "On Earth, we have a word in Korean, Han. It means a deep sadness mixed with hope. It's the feeling you get when something is both tragic and beautiful at the same time. We think Han makes life more meaningful, not less." "I don't understand," said Colex 44. "That's the problem," said Hyejin quietly. "None of your species understand anymore. You've all forgotten that struggle gives life meaning. You've made everything so perfect that nothing matters." They were approaching Nexus Prime now. The silver towers gleamed in the light of the system's star. It was the most advanced place in the galaxy, home to the greatest civilization ever created. But looking at it now, Taemin thought it looked lonely. "We need to contact Dr. Kyung-ho back on Earth," he said. "He's our expert on how minds work. Maybe he can help us understand this better." The quantum communication with Earth took 6 hours to set up. When Dr. Kyung-ho's face appeared on the screen, he looked worried. "I've been reading the reports you sent," he said. "I think what you're describing is something we call existential collapse. It happens when life becomes so easy and perfect that people lose their sense of purpose." "How do we fix it?" asked Taemin. "You don't fix it," said Dr. Kyung-ho. "You prevent it. You make sure people always have something to struggle for, something to hope for, something to work toward. You make sure that happiness is earned, not given." "But how do we help the people who are already lost?" asked Sora. Dr. Kyung-ho was quiet for a moment. "You remind them what it means to be alive. You show them that struggle and sadness and even pain are part of what makes existence beautiful. You teach them to find meaning in imperfection. After the call ended, the crew sat in silence. They had 23 days left to solve the mystery of the silent worlds, but now they thought they knew what the problem was. The question was, could they convince the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy that their idea of perfection was actually a trap? "We're going to need help," said Taemin finally. "From who?" asked Wu Jin. Taemin smiled for the first time in days. "From the most primitive, inefficient, struggling species in the galaxy. From humans." Taemin stood outside the Confederation Council chambers and took a deep breath. Inside his jacket pocket was a small wooden box that his grandmother had given him 20 years ago. It contained tea leaves from the mountains of Korea, and it smelled like home. "Are you sure about this?" asked Wu Jin. "What if they think we're crazy?" "They already think we're primitive," said Sora. "We might as well show them what primitive really looks like." He Jin was carrying a bag full of things from Earth. A guitar, some books of poetry, a set of wooden bowls, and packets of seeds. "Remember," she said, "we're not trying to convince them with facts and logic. We're trying to show them something they've forgotten." The doors opened, and they walked into the great chamber. All the alien species were there, sitting in their circle of seats. Chancellor Zix-9 looked down at them with his black eyes. "Well," said the Chancellor, "have you solved the mystery of the silent worlds?" "We think so," said Taemin. "But first, we need to show you something." "More primitive rituals?" asked a voice from the circle. Several aliens made those sounds that might have been laughter. "Yes," said Taemin simply. "More primitive rituals." He nodded to his crew. They had practiced this for 3 days, working out every detail. He-Jin spread a cloth on the floor in the center of the circle. It was not smooth and perfect, like everything else in the chamber. It was rough and handmade, with patterns that were slightly crooked. Sora knelt beside the cloth and began to arrange the wooden bowls. They were different sizes and shapes, and they didn't match. Some were darker, some lighter. Some had small scratches or dents. "What is the purpose of this?" asked Chancellor Zix-9. "Patience," said Taemin. "Understanding takes time." Wu Jin was setting up something that looked like a small camping stove. He lit it with an old-fashioned match instead of using an energy igniter. The flame danced and flickered, never staying exactly the same shape. Ye-Jin brought out the wooden box and opened it carefully. The smell of tea leaves filled the chamber. Some of the aliens shifted in their seats. KLX-44 leaned forward slightly. "This tea came from plants that grew in imperfect soil," said Hyojin. "They had to struggle against weather and insects and competition from other plants. That struggle made them strong and gave them flavor." She put water in a simple metal pot and placed it on the flame. The water began to heat slowly. Much more slowly than any modern heating system would have done it. "This is inefficient," said Hex 12. "A standard nutrition dispenser could provide optimal chemical balance in seconds." "Yes," said Taemin. "It is inefficient. That's the point." While they waited for the water to boil, Sora picked up the guitar. It was an old instrument made of wood and metal strings. Some of the frets were worn smooth by thousands of fingers. "This makes sounds that serve no practical purpose," she said. "The sounds don't provide information or solve problems. They exist only to make people feel things." She began to play. The melody was simple and sad and beautiful. It was a song about missing home, about loving people who were far away, about hoping for better days. Some notes were perfect, some were slightly off. The imperfections made it more beautiful, not less. Several aliens seemed confused. The energy being Sis-9 flickered in what might have been surprise. The crystalline tree creature made a sound like wind chimes. The water began to boil. Hyojin poured it over the tea leaves and let it steep. The whole chamber filled with the smell of home and earth and growing things. "Now we wait," she said. "Good tea cannot be rushed." "How long?" asked Chancellor Zix-9. "As long as it takes," said Hyojin. While they waited, Woojin brought out a small book. It was old and worn, with pages that were yellowed at the edges. "This contains stories," he said, "not facts or data. Stories about people who never existed, doing things that never happened." "What is the purpose of lies?" asked a voice from the circle. "They're not lies," said Sora, still playing the guitar softly. "They're truths told in a different way." Woojin opened the book and began to read. It was a story about a young woman who had to choose between safety and adventure. She chose adventure, even though it meant leaving her family and facing danger. The story was about courage and sacrifice and love. Some of the aliens listened with what might have been interest. Others seemed bored or confused, but they all listened. When the tea was ready, Hyojin poured it into the wooden bowls. Each bowl got a different amount because the bowls were different sizes. The tea was not perfectly the same color in each bowl because the leaves had steeped unevenly. "Now we share," said Taemin. He picked up one of the bowls and held it carefully in both hands. The tea was hot, and the bowl warmed his fingers. He breathed in the smell and took a small sip. The tea was slightly bitter, but also sweet and complex. "This tea is not perfect," he said. "It is not the optimal nutrition for my body. It does not solve any problems or make me more efficient, but it connects me to the earth where it grew, to the people who picked the leaves, to my grandmother who taught me how to make it, and to all of you who are sharing this moment with me." He passed the bowl to Klex-44. The Veltar took it with two of its 4 hands, copying Taimin's careful grip. "I do not understand," said Klex-44, but it took a sip anyway. For a moment something changed in the alien's black marble eyes, something that might have been wonder. "It tastes like..." Klex-44 paused, searching for words. "Like memory. Like something I had forgotten." The bowl passed from alien to alien around the circle. Each one tasted the tea, and each one seemed to experience something they had not felt for a long time. When the bowl came back to Taemin, it was empty, but somehow that felt right. "Now," said Taemin, "let me tell you about the silent worlds." He stood up and walked to the center of the circle. "Your people on those worlds had everything they wanted. Perfect health, unlimited resources, no problems to solve. They lived in virtual worlds where nothing bad could ever happen." "This sounds ideal," said Chancellor Zix-9. "Does it?" asked Hyojin. "If you never face challenges, how do you grow? If you never experience sadness, how do you know when you're happy? If you never struggle for anything, how do you know what's worth having?" "The people on those worlds died while they were still alive," said Sora. "They had everything, so they had nothing. They were perfectly safe, so they were perfectly bored. They had no reason to get up in the morning, so they stopped getting up at all." "This is illogical," said Hex 12. "Happiness should be maximized. Suffering should be eliminated. Should it? Asked Wu Jin. On Earth, we have a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. We believe that struggle and hardship teach us things we can't learn any other way. Taemin pulled out a packet of seeds from his pocket. These are flower seeds from Earth. If I plant them in perfect soil, give them perfect water, perfect sunlight, and protect them from all danger, they will grow. But they will be weak. The first real wind will break them. He held up another seed. But if I plant this one in rough ground, let it face rain and wind and competition, let it struggle to survive, it will grow strong. Its roots will go deep. Its stem will be flexible. It will bloom more beautifully because it had to fight for its beauty. We think your people are like flowers in perfect soil, said Hyojin. They have everything they need, but they have forgotten why they need it. How? Do we help them remember? Asked Sis 9. The energy being's voice was softer now, less cold. By bringing back the things you call inefficient, said Sora. Art and music and stories, challenges and competitions and even arguments, love and loss and hope and fear. But these things cause suffering, said a voice from the circle. Yes, said Taemin, they do. But they also cause joy. Real joy, not the fake happiness of virtual worlds. Joy that means something because it had to be earned. He looked around the circle at all the alien faces. Some looked confused. Some looked thoughtful. Some looked almost afraid. You want to know what we think happened to your silent worlds? He said. We think they forgot how to be alive. They became so afraid of death that they stopped living. They became so afraid of pain that they stopped feeling anything at all. And you think your primitive rituals can fix this? Asked Chancellor. Zix 9. We think they can help, said Hyojin, but only if you're willing to try something that might seem foolish. Only if you're willing to be inefficient and imperfect and beautifully, messily alive. The chamber was quiet for a long time. Finally, KLX-44 spoke up. The tea, it said slowly. When I tasted it, I remembered something. From before my people became logical. We used to gather in circles and share food and tell stories about our ancestors. These gatherings were eliminated as inefficient, said another Veltar from the circle. Yes, said KLX-44. But when we eliminated them, we also eliminated something else. Something I had forgotten I was missing. The alien paused. We eliminated joy. Chancellor Zix 9 looked down at the humans with his black eyes. For the first time, those eyes seemed less cold. Show us, he said quietly. Show us how to save our worlds. The ship Harmony had never carried so many passengers before. Along with Taemin's crew, they now had 12 alien observers from different species. KLX-44 sat in the corner, reading Earth poetry with what looked like fascination. Sis 9 floated. Nearby, its energy form pulsing with colors that meant curiosity in Cathara language. Approaching New Goryeo, said Sora from the pilot's seat. It's been silent for 6 months. New Goryeo had been a human colony that joined the Confederation 50 years ago. The people there had adopted alien ways, built perfect cities, and eliminated all the messy parts of human culture. Now it was as dead as all the other silent worlds. Why are we starting with a human world? Asked Hex 12. Because, said Taemin, we understand how human minds work. If we can wake up our own people, maybe we can learn how to wake up yours. The planet looked beautiful from space, green and blue and perfect. But as they got closer, Taemin could see the empty cities, the still transport lanes, the silent communication towers. They landed in the main city of Sol Prime. It was nothing like the soul on Earth that Taemin remembered. There were no street vendors selling spicy rice cakes, no children playing in parks, no old men arguing about politics while they played Baduk. Everything was clean and efficient and dead. The first person they found was a young man named Jin Ho. He was lying in a virtual reality pod in what used to be a community center. The walls around him were bare white. There were no pictures, no decorations, no signs that real people had ever gathered there. "Jin-ho," said Hye-jin softly. She knelt beside the pod and touched the young man's shoulder. "Jin-ho, can you hear me?" His eyes were open but empty. They looked right through her as if she wasn't there. "The virtual system has been off for 2 weeks," said Sora, checking the computers. "But he hasn't moved. The medical scanners say he's healthy, but he's not responding to anything." Kalex 44 clicked its mandibles nervously. Perhaps his mind is damaged beyond repair. "No," said Taemin. "I think his mind is just sleeping. We need to wake it up." Hye-jin opened her bag and pulled out a small speaker. She connected it to her music player and scrolled through the files until she found what she was looking for. "This is an old Korean song," she said. "My grandmother used to sing it to me when I was scared." The song began to play. It was simple and gentle, sung by a woman with a voice like warm honey. The words were about home and family and finding your way back when you were lost. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Jin-ho's fingers twitched. "Did you see that?" whispered Woo-jin. Hye-jin kept playing the song. She began to sing along softly. The melody filled the empty room like sunlight filling a dark cave. Jin-ho's eyes moved, just a little. But they moved. They focused on Hye-jin's face. "Jin-ho," she said again. "Come back to us." The young man's lips moved. No sound came out at first, then a whisper so quiet they could barely hear it. "Mother?" "No," said Hye-jin gently. "I'm Hye-jin. I'm here to help you remember." Jin-ho sat up slowly. He looked around the white room with confusion and growing horror. "Where am I? Where is everyone? Where are the colors?" "What colors?" asked Taemin. "The festival colors. The red lanterns for New Year. The yellow flowers for Buddha's birthday. The green leaves in the parks where children played." Jin-ho's voice grew stronger. "Where did all the colors go?" "You gave them up," said Hye-jin sadly. "You said they were inefficient." Jin-ho stared at her. "But how can you live without colors?" "You can't," said Sora. "That's why you stopped living." They helped Jin-ho out of the pod. His legs were weak from months of not moving, but his eyes were getting brighter every minute. "I remember now," he said. "We were told that emotions were primitive, that art and music and festivals were waste of time. We were told that logic and efficiency would make us perfect." "And did they?" asked Kalex 44. Jin-ho laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Perfect? We became so perfect that we forgot why we wanted to be alive. We had everything we needed, but nothing we wanted. We had solved all our problems, but we had also solved all our joy." They moved through the city, finding more people in their pods. Each time they used something different to wake them up. Music for some, stories for others. For one old woman, it was the smell of kimchi that Woo-jin had brought from Earth. For a young girl, it was a simple paper crane that Hye-jin folded while she watched. The alien observers took notes on everything. Size 9 was particularly interested in how the humans used memories to wake up the sleeping minds. "The neural patterns are fascinating," the energy being said. When you triggered memory responses, their brain activity increased by 300%. Memory is not just data storage, said Taemin. Memory is connection. When we remember our past, we remember who we are and why our lives matter. By the end of the first day, they had awakened 50 people. By the end of the week, they had awakened 5,000. Each person who woke up helped wake up others. They sang songs, told stories, cooked food that tasted like home instead of providing optimal nutrition. The aliens watched everything with growing amazement. "Look at this," said Klex 44, pointing to a group of awakened humans who were arguing about how to organize a festival. "They are disagreeing with each other. In a civilized society, this would be prevented." "But look closer," said Hyojin. "They're not fighting. They're discussing. They have different ideas, but they're working together to find the best solution. The disagreement is making their plan better, not worse." "I don't understand," said Hex 12. "Competition and conflict aren't always bad," said Wu Jin. "When people disagree respectfully, they challenge each other to think harder and do better. It's like exercise for the mind." They were setting up what the humans called a community feast in the main square. The awakened people were cooking traditional foods, hanging colorful decorations, and preparing games and performances. It was messy and loud and completely inefficient. It was also the most alive thing any of the aliens had ever seen. "Why do they waste time on decorations that serve no practical purpose?" asked one of the observers. "Because beauty makes life worth living," said Sora. "When everything is just functional, when everything is just practical, people forget that. They're not machines. They forget that being alive should feel good." An old man named Dong Su was teaching children how to play traditional drums. The rhythm was not perfect. Some children were too fast, some too slow, but they were laughing and trying and learning together. "In our virtual worlds," Dong Su told the children, "everything was always perfect. The music never had wrong notes. The pictures never had flaws. The stories never had sad parts. But perfect things aren't real things. Real things have mistakes and beauty and sadness all mixed together." A little girl raised her hand. "Is that why we stopped feeling happy in the perfect worlds?" "Yes," said Dong Su. "If everything is always sweet, you forget what sweetness tastes like. You need bitter things, too, so you can appreciate the sweet things when they come." Klex 44 had been listening to this conversation. Now it approached Dong Su hesitantly. "May I try the drums?" the alien asked. Dong Su smiled and handed Klex 44 a pair of drumsticks. The Veltar held them awkwardly with 2 of its 4 hands. "Just feel the rhythm," said Dong Su. "Don't think about it. Let your body remember how to move." Klex 44 began to play. The rhythm was clumsy and uneven, but there was something alive in it. Something that made the aliens' eyes shine in a way they hadn't shone for centuries. "I remember," Klex 44 said quietly. "Before we became logical, we used to make music like this. We used to dance. We used to laugh." "What happened to it?" asked the little girl. "We threw it away," said Klex 44. "We thought it was primitive and useless. We thought logic was better than joy." "That was silly," said the girl. "Yes," said Klex 44. "It was very silly." By the end of the month, New Goryeo was alive again. People had torn down the white walls and painted murals in bright colors. They had planted gardens with flowers that served no purpose except being beautiful. They had started schools where children learned art and music along with math and science. But most importantly, they had learned to struggle again. They argued about politics and competed in sports, and worried about their children and dreamed about the future. They were beautifully, messily, imperfectly alive. "One world down," said Taemin, looking at the reports from the other silent worlds. 12 to go. "It won't be as easy with the non-human worlds," said Wu Jin. "We don't understand their cultures the way we understand our own." "Then we'll learn," said Hyejin. "We'll ask them to teach us about their old ways, their forgotten songs, their abandoned dreams." Sis 9 pulsed with soft blue light. "I want to try this with my people. I want to remember what we were like before we became pure energy. And I want to help my people remember what joy feels like," said Klelex 44. Taemin looked around at the awakened city, at the aliens who were learning to laugh, at his crew who had helped bring a world back to life. "Then let's go wake up the galaxy," he said. 6 months later, Taemin stood in his new office on Nexus Prime and could hardly believe what he saw outside his window. The silver towers were still there, but they were different now. Bright banners hung between buildings. Gardens grew on rooftops, where there had only been metal before. And in the streets below, beings from dozens of different species walked together, talking and laughing and arguing and living. "The last silent world came back online yesterday," said Sora, walking into his office with a report in her hands. "Velkara Prime. That makes all 13 worlds awakened and thriving." Taemin smiled. Velkara Prime had been the hardest one. The Veltar had spent so many centuries believing that emotion was weakness that they had almost forgotten how to feel anything at all. But KLX 44 had worked patiently with them, teaching them the drums and helping them remember their old stories. "What's the latest from the Cultural Academy?" asked Taemin. "Sora is teaching 60 species how to tell stories that matter instead of just sharing information," said Sora with a grin. "Yesterday, a Dromond asked her how to write a poem about missing someone. Can you imagine a machine being wanting to write about loneliness?" Through the window, Taemin could see construction crews working on a new building. But these weren't the efficient robot crews that used to build everything on Nexus Prime. These were mixed teams of different species, working together and sometimes getting in each other's way and solving problems as they came up. "They're building it slowly," he said, watching a young Kithara trying to hammer a nail while in energy form. "Inefficiently. But they're having fun doing it," said Sora. "And they're learning things they never would have learned if robots did all the work." Hyejin came in carrying a basket full of vegetables. She had dirt under her fingernails and a satisfied smile on her face. "The community garden is producing its first harvest," she said. "Chancellor Zix wanted to know why we grow food when food synthesizers are more efficient. I told him to taste a tomato that grew in real soil and see if he could still ask that question." "Did he try it?" asked Taemin. "He did. Then he asked if he could help plant the next crop." Wu Jin appeared in the doorway, but he wasn't alone. Behind him was a group of young beings from different species, all wearing the same kind of colorful shirts. "The Interspecies Sports League is expanding," said Wu Jin proudly. "We now have 12 teams playing Korean-style football. The Dromon team calls themselves the Glorious Inefficients." "Do they actually play well?" asked Sora. "Terribly," said Wu Jin with a huge grin. "But they're learning teamwork and dealing with failure and celebrating small victories. Yesterday, their goalkeeper saved his first shot and cried tears of joy. A machine being crying because he stopped a ball from going into a net." "It sounds like chaos," said Taemin. "Beautiful chaos," agreed Wu Jin. Dr. Kyung-ho's face appeared on the communication screen. He was calling from Earth, where he had been documenting all the changes happening across the galaxy. "The psychological reports are fascinating," he said. "Depression rates among Confederation species have dropped by 90%. Creativity levels are up 800%. Problem-solving abilities have actually improved because beings are now willing to try new approaches and make mistakes." "What about the Council?" asked Taemin. "Are they still worried about efficiency?" "Some of them are," said Dr. Kyung-ho. "But it's hard to argue with success. The species that have embraced human cultural practices are healthier, happier, and more productive than they've been in centuries. Even the ones who still value logic are starting to see that emotion and logic work better together than apart." After the call ended, Taemin walked to his desk. On it was a wooden box that had arrived that morning from Earth. Inside was a letter from his wife and children, along with a small potted plant. "From your family back home," said Hyejin, noticing him looking at the box. "They say they're proud of me," said Taemin, reading the letter. "But they also say they miss me and want me to come home for the Moon Festival." "Are you going?" asked Sora. Taemin touched the small plant gently. It was just a seedling, but it was alive and growing and reaching toward the light. "I think I am," he said. "The galaxy can handle being inefficient without me for a while." There was a knock at the door. Chancellor Zix-9 entered, but he looked very different from the cold, perfect being they had first met. He was wearing clothes with colors instead of plain white. His black eyes seemed warmer somehow. "Taemin," said the Chancellor. "I wanted to thank you before you leave for Earth." "You don't need to thank me," said Taemin. "We all learned from each other." "Did we?" asked Zix-9. "I think we learned more from you than you learned from us. We had forgotten something very important." "What was that?" "That being alive is supposed to feel good. Not perfect, not always easy, but good. Rich and complex and meaningful." The Chancellor paused. "I have been reading human poetry. There is a word in your language that I find fascinating. Bittersweet. Something that is both sad and happy at the same time." "Like missing someone you love," said Hyejin. "Yes," said Zix-9. "For the first time in centuries, I understand what that feels like. I miss my people the way they used to be, before we became so cold and logical. But I am also happy because we are learning to be warm again." "What will you do with the Confederation now?" asked Woojin. "We are changing the laws," said Zix-9. "Instead of requiring species to give up their cultural practices to join us, we are requiring them to preserve and share those practices. We want the galaxy to be diverse and messy and beautifully alive." "And the silent worlds?" "They will never be silent again. Each one is becoming a center for different kinds of human wisdom. New Goryeo teaches music and art. Velkara Prime teaches the value of struggle and competition. Serenity teaches the importance of imperfection. Through the window, they could see beings from dozens of species gathering in the main square. It was time for the evening meal, but instead of eating alone in efficient nutritional pods, they were sharing food and stories and laughter. "There's something else," said Zix-9. "The Confederation Council has voted to rename our capital world." "Rename it to what?" asked Taemin. "Seongso Prime, Sacred Place Prime, because this is where the galaxy learned to be alive again." Kalex 44 appeared in the doorway. The Veltar was carrying a small drum and wearing a necklace made of colorful beads. "Taemin," it said, "the farewell ceremony is ready." They all walked down to the main square together. Hundreds of beings were gathered there, all the species that had learned to sing and dance and play and struggle and love again. Someone had built a small stage in the center, and on it was a simple wooden chair. "This is for you," said Sis-9, floating up to Taemin. The Kithara's energy form was pulsing with warm colors. A tradition we learned from humans. When someone important goes away, we gather to tell them what they mean to us. Taemin sat in the chair, feeling embarrassed but also touched. One by one, beings came forward to speak. A young Dromond said, "You taught us that crying is not a malfunction. It is a feature." An old Veltar said, "You showed us that our ancestors were wise, not primitive." A Kithara energy being said, "You helped us remember that having a body means being able to hug someone." The testimonies went on for an hour. Each one was simple and heartfelt and real. When they were finished, KLX-44 began to play the drum. Others joined in with instruments they had learned to make and play. The music was not perfect, but it was joyful. Then something unexpected happened. The crowd began to sing, not in any one language, but in all languages at once. Human and Veltar and Kithara and Dromond, voices all blending together in a song about friendship and home and hope. Taemin felt tears on his cheeks. 6 months ago, he had come to this place as a representative of a primitive species begging for acceptance. Now he was leaving as a teacher who had helped the galaxy remember how to live. "Will you come back?" asked Zix-9. "Of course," said Taemin. "This is my home now, too, all of it. Earth and the galaxy and everywhere beings gather to share stories and make music and argue about the best way to grow tomatoes." As his ship lifted, off from Seongso Prime, Taemin looked down at the planet below. The lights of the city twinkled like stars, but they were warm lights now, not cold ones. Lights from homes where families gathered, from parks where children played, from restaurants, where friends argued about everything and nothing. The galaxy had learned to revere the simple, messy, beautiful act of being alive. And somehow, in teaching that lesson, humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or as servants, but as the species that remembered joy. Sora sat down beside him as they jumped toward Earth. "Do you think this will last?" she asked. "Will they remember what we taught them?" Taemin smiled and touched the small plant from his family. It was still growing, still reaching for the light. "They'll remember," he said, "because now they know the secret." "What secret?" "That being perfectly happy is not perfect at all. That struggling and failing and trying again is what makes life worth living. That love and loss and hope and fear are not problems to be solved, but gifts to be treasured." Outside the ship's windows, the stars shone with ancient light. And somewhere among those stars, beings who had forgotten how to live were learning to be beautifully, imperfectly, joyfully alive again.